Unraveling podcast and YouTube. And I wanted to share, I'm Erin McGuire Hudson, and I wanted to share that we have taken some time off from this podcast. And so we're revamping it. Well, we're just restarting it. I definitely took time off as I was very deep in the weeds, as we say, with the book. It just took so much time from me to get into those final reorganizational pieces and rewriting, and I just could only manage so much. And so some things had to go during that time. And unfortunately, the podcast was one of those things. But I am wanting to revamp it and get it going again because I know that I've heard from so many of you that you still listen to it or you still share it with people. And I so appreciate that. And so we are back. We are back with the Art of Unraveling podcast. And today's episode really is all about writing a book and what that brought up for me. Because let me tell you, it brought up so much. Be careful what you title the name of your book, because when you title it something like The Art of Unraveling, I definitely had my own unraveling process to go through as I wrote the book. So, briefly, I read a great book when I was 21 years old called The Art, or no, it was called Spilling Open by a woman named Sabrina Ward Harrison. And I loved that book. She's an artist, and so she had her art beautifully, every page was in full color, and she had her art throughout the book, and then she'd put in her journal entries occasionally. And it just, the way that she shared made me feel so seen and connected, that I remember being 21 years old and thinking, someday I want to write a book that does the same thing for people. So it's like I planted this seed, or rather, my soul reminded me of the seed that was planted before I came, because I believe that. I believe that we come in with certain soul missions, if you will, certain desires. I always say your desires are divine, like whatever you're desiring. Maybe you're desiring to be a parent. That was not something I ever really desired, to be quite honest. And I'm not a parent. And I don't feel like I'm missing anything per se. Some people come in and they know that they so want to be a parent. So it doesn't matter what the desire is. I believe they're placed on your heart by God, the divine. And so I know that I came in with this desire to be a writer. Even when I was like, I think it was third grade, fifth grade, maybe. No, I think it was fifth grade. Uh, I remember specifically my English teacher had us do an assignment where we were to take an old story, like a storybook or a story, like a children's story. Thank you. I am like a what? I don't know. Like a child's story that we've all heard a million times, like a fairy tale, and turn it into something in the modern day world. And I don't know where I got this idea, but my grandma saved it, and I found it a few years ago. I had this idea to take a spin on the Little Red Riding Hood. And I think I called it Little Red. I don't remember, but it was something about like a mortar. It would like involve motorcycles. I don't remember the book, so I don't even know why I'm telling you the story. But Little Red motorcycle something. I don't remember, but my teacher liked it so much, and I don't know what she thought, but thought it was creative enough that she entered me into the Young Writers Association, and I got in. And I'm so sad. There's so much of my childhood that I don't remember. That if you read my book, I go very deep into how I was raised, and kind of the different things I've had to deal with growing up with a narcissist and an alcoholic. There's so much of my childhood I don't remember, and that's quite common for people that grow up with a lot of trauma. I think I was mostly in a dissociative state. So when you disassociate, because that's just a natural thing your brain and nervous system will have you do if there's too much chaos around you. Now, mind you, I was already a highly sensitive person. So I came in with a sensitive nervous system. So if that's the case for you, it's like everything gets amplified. So I've had clients that come to me that are highly sensitive, but they'll be like, my brothers and sisters don't remember things the way that I do, or they don't remember it being as bad. That's very common because, again, if you have a more sensitive nervous system, loud noises are like times 10, or somebody that's upset is like, it's a much bigger dysregulation for your nervous system than somebody who's more has a more normal, non-sensitive nervous system, if that makes sense. So I wish I remembered more about the Young Writers Conference that I got to attend because it was a very special deal that I just didn't, I was too young to understand. And I think about that all the time. I think about what if that had been nurtured, that skill of writing. And like I was just watching, I'm trying to stay on track here. Clearly not doing a very good job. But I was just watching uh, a short video about Alyssa Liu, I think is her name, the American gold champion medalist in figure skating, women's figure skating. And her dad actually was a video, it was a video of her dad. And her dad was saying, they were like, what made you, because they're like, how much money did you spend on this? And he was like, probably 500 to a million, 500,000 to $1 million on her training and everything when she was young. And they're like, why did you do that? And he said he just saw a talent. He saw that it was there. And so sometimes I think about that with writing, like if that had been nurtured, where I would be now. But it's okay, life happens the way it's supposed to. But yeah, that is definitely a thought that I have. And wishing that I remembered my experience at the Young Writers Conference because I remember it was in Des Moines and I lived in Fort Dodge, Iowa. And it was like at this big conference center and there were different things that you got to attend. And I probably didn't pay attention and was just, yeah, young. So I'm not beating myself up here. I'm literally just reminiscing on, dang, I wish I could remember that more. But that is trauma, my friends. That is what trauma does. And in my book, The Art of Unraveling, you'll read my story and you'll understand more about your own story and your own journey through my book. But so back to being 21, and it took me many years to get around to actually following through on that desire to write a book. I believe I started when I looked back, I think I started about 15 years ago, which is a really long time. Now, this particular book, my book that has been written, is not the book I started 15 years ago. I have went through a few iterations of my book that never saw the light of day. For whatever reason, they I thought I sounded angry or upset, and so I just never brought them forward. But that probably about 8 years ago, so some of the writing that's within this book was maybe around 8 years ago that I started. And it just took me a really long time. It took me a really long time to I would never write a book this way ever again because I had pulled from many different things I had written over those years to put into the book. And so then I had this whole arduous process of having to organize everything. And that was harder for me than actually writing. And I hired people that could help me over the years. And then I still had to go in and do it again. And even just in the last 6 months, like the process of taking notes from the editor and then adding in new stuff that I had learned that I wanted to make sure was in there because it was important to me. It was just a process. But what I realized when I submitted to get my proof of the book, what I realized was that I had kind of been hiding behind I'm writing a book. Like people that were in my world knew that I was writing a book because I talked about it. Like I'm writing a book, you guys. This is the year. Like I would say that. And I say that to myself with love because there were definitely things I needed to go through that became part of the book, uh, so on and so forth. But I realized when I submitted to get the proof of my book before it would I would put it on Amazon and I got it in the mail. I thought that would have been the most amazing day of my life. I thought next to my wedding, I thought I would be in such elation and joy. And what happened was quite the opposite. I actually I wouldn't say I got depressed, but I kind of went into a little bit of a depression and all this grief started coming up and fear. Now, up until that time, before that, I had been doing a lot of healing work in my from my own coaching and healing work that I do with my clients. I was doing that on myself around being seen because I knew this was going to be a big jump out of my comfort zone in visibility because my book is a very raw, it's my own personal stories that I don't really hold back on. Like some of the stuff I've put in there, I'm like, are you sure you want to include that? Like that's really personal and raw. And it's like I knew in my soul, I knew in my heart and soul that I had to share because so many people struggle with so many different things and they feel alone and they feel like they can't share that stuff. And I want a book for people to be seen. I want a book for people to feel safe and to feel like whatever I'm going through, I can heal from it. However bad it got, like, look at how bad it got for her. If she can do it, I can do it. Like, that is my motive for writing this book. And all this stuff started coming up for me around being seen and this grief. I think I was grieving the project, the long arduous project I had been doing for so many years. I think I was grieving that that was over. I think I was grieving who I used to be before I really put myself out there in this way. Like this book was really an up level for me, but definitely it pushed me far out of my comfort zone when it came to being visible because I can't control who this book lands in their hands. I can't control that. And I've been really trying as a recovering trauma survivor, I've been working on my control issues because you develop a strong need to control things when you have had trauma as a child. And so I couldn't control who got this book. And I think I was grieving that. I was grieving just a lot of things. And I really just had to take some time off and just allow myself to move through that process in a nervous system friendly way, which is the work I do with people. We could call that a dorsal vagal response, where I went into my dorsal response, which is at the bottom of the ladder of the nervous system responses, but it's not something we should avoid, you know? Um, I went into that space and I just allowed myself to be there, like you would a child that was really sad about something and that was grieving the loss of something. They're going to have moments where they're sad. You're going to have moments where you're sad. And I've spent my life running from my feelings. If you've been in this around here long and you've listened to my different podcasts, then you know that I've escaped my feelings for so long. So sometimes the grief is just old stuff that we've repressed too. We don't have to name it. We don't always have to name what it is. But again, I thought I was going to be on cloud nine, like, oh my gosh, I'm holding a copy of my book. It's not the actual copy. There were still changes that needed to be made, but I've got a copy in my hands. And all this grief, all this fear, and then also what I had just previously mentioned is that I had these thoughts of like, I've been hiding behind writing a book, but it it was so safe. Like, look at, I'm doing this cool thing. Like my ego really loved that. Like I'm doing this thing, but I wasn't actually doing it by putting the book out there. So when I put the rubber to the road and I put it out there, like my whole system just like went, ah, like I don't know. I don't want to do this. So I expanded my window of tolerance. I expanded my window of comfort. Now my window of comfort for visibility is bigger because if I did that, I mean that's like everything, that's the meat and potatoes. That's the hardest shit I've went through and it's out there now and I can't take it back. I mean, I guess I could take it off Amazon, but the people that have it, they've got it. So to share that process with you because this was such a deep, pretty much a steep spiritual journey to go through. And the last thing that happened is in a session I was having with my coach, I ended up seeing, I think growing up with trauma, you, I learned anyway, I think it's very common for us to learn to dim our light, to not shine too brightly. In my case, I didn't want to outshine my mom. I knew it wasn't safe to do that. So I learned to stay small and stay quiet. And so that's where a lot of my visibility fears have come from. They also come from past lives and ancestral entanglements. We'll talk about that another time. But I had this whole in this session, I saw all of these faces around me. Like I was deep in a kind of a meditative state, and I saw all these faces laughing. And I told my husband this, and he's like, "Oh my God, I don't think you should do that again." And it's like, no, it was a good thing, I promise. So as I share it, I promise you it's a good thing. But it's like I faced my darkest fear. Because one of my darkest fears, deepest fears was, being ridiculed, being judged, being laughed at, being called a joke. And it's like I had all these faces around me, and they were all like snarling and angry looking and laughing at me and mocking me. And I stood there, and all of a sudden, and I wasn't trying to make this vision happen either, by the way, this was coming to me. And I just started laughing. And I was like, this is ridiculous. And they were like, you're a joke. And I was just like laughing. And I'm like, you're a joke. I'm like, this is so hilarious. And it was this weird shift because again, that was like my darkest fear. Like people like laughing at me and, telling me how awful I am or whatever. Uh, and that has happened to me, but before, by the way, I had a run-in once of that. Anyway, so what happened was I'm trying to remember now. So they were laughing. Then I was just kind of laughing. And all of a sudden, I started seeing their words like bouncing off of me. And it reminded me of that thing we learned when we're kids. Whatever you say bounces off of me and sticks to you. It wasn't sticking to them, but it was just like it was flying off of me. And I really had this moment of if I don't take it in, it doesn't stick with me. And therefore, it doesn't affect me. And then I saw the Buddha, and I'm not a Buddhist, but I do love the image of the Buddha. It feels very Zen to me. I had an image of Buddha sitting on a lotus flower, with his legs crossed and his eyes were closed. And he just like came up in front of me and he wasn't even saying anything, but rather it was kind of this transmission of energy of like when you're in that nature, when you're in your Buddha nature that we all have the ability to tap into, there's nothing to fear. And it was a profound spiritual experience, is all I can say. It's still to this day, and it wasn't that long ago, but it was right when my book got released for real that this happened. Because the fear was still kind of coming up of like, what are people going to say? And like, this is really personal. And um, it was such a profound experience. And yeah, I'm still holding on to that image of the Buddha and that there is nothing to fear when we're in that which is our true nature. The survival patterns that we learn, that we pick up from trauma in childhood and adulthood, that's not our true nature. Those are survival patterns that we think is who we are. So I just wanted to share that with you. I'm so excited for what the book is going to bring and the people that are reading it. I'm getting so much amazing feedback. And people are, I don't know if anybody's finished it yet that I know of, but there's people that are like three-fourths the way through it. And yeah, it's incredible to hear what it's doing for people. And so go get the book, The Art of Unraveling. It's on Amazon. I also have a companion workbook if you are somebody that likes to do journaling and have a deeper process to do alongside the book. That is also available on Amazon and on my website. I will leave a link below this video and podcast. And I would just be so honored if you got my book, if you shared it with your community. And yeah, I really feel like it has the power to really be a gentle companion and guide for people uh, as you're on your path. So it's really for people who, grew up with different trauma or just want a gentle guide, want some nervous system understanding and awareness. If you're sensitive, intuitive, an empath, and it's for you too if you struggle with like being the strong one, the one that holds it all together for everybody. So we go deep into a lot of different patterns, people pleasing, perfectionism, and just really where all that comes from. And it's a lot of my own personal stories. So I'd be so honored if you checked it out. And thank you so much for listening. We are back. It's my intention to do this weekly. I hope that I can keep that intention going. There may be a week or two that we miss here or there, but we'll at least get these going a few times a month is my ultimate goal. So thank you so much for being here, and we'll see you next time.